For most, the belief in a god or a higher power gives a sense of comfort in a world full of unknowns and terrible things. It gives them a reason to be a good person so that they may live on in the next world, wherever they believe that may be. For some, it takes on a whole new level of extremism and can combine with an already present mental illness. Religious fundamentalists can come in many forms. Some believe in God, some believe in fortune-telling, others believe in aliens. A lot of the victims of religious fundamentalists are unaware that they become victims as they're driven by their own raw belief in whatever that fixation may be. Today, we're going to cover 5 cases of people who may have experienced religious fundamentalism to the point that it triggered a psychosis in which they did terrible things to themselves or to others they loved. Some of the details in these cases are very disturbing, so viewer discretion is advised. Lori Vallow and Chad Daybed led a Mormon-type religious group that the media would later refer to as a doomsday cult in Idaho. Chad worked as a missionary for the Church of Latter-day Saints and came from a Mormon background. He went to a college and soon married a woman called Tammy. They had 5 children. While married to Tammy, he started a publishing business where he could publish his books based off of his own beliefs about the end times. He also worked as a gravedigger since the end of the world books weren't really making too much money. Over time, though, Chad was able to find a small circle within his Mormon sect of fanatics who were also obsessed with the Second Coming, and he was able to become popular with them and began selling books regularly. His books often featured members of his own family as characters and depicted apocalyptic and dystopian futures. Chad's belief became more extreme over time when he claimed to have 2 near-death experiences and was told things by visitors in those experiences. Lori, who also grew up Mormon, became interested in Chad's book series about the end times. She met up with him at a preparedness conference, in which Chad mentioned that he and Lori had been married many times before in past lives. They began talking privately and eventually got together. At that time, of course, Lori and Chad were still married to other people. The man Lori was married to was called Charles Vallow. Charles discovered the affair and sent an email to Tammy Daybed, Chad's wife, to inform her of their spouse's affair. 11 days later, he would be dead. Lori moved to Idaho to be with Chad, and in that time, neighbors mentioned that the children were often left without supervision by adults for long periods of time. She had 2 children, Tyler, 16, and JJ, which Lori claimed was her niece's drug baby. He was severely autistic. The children went missing in September. Their remains were found buried in the pet cemetery section of Chad's backyard. Texts later revealed that Lori and Chad were convinced that the children were zombies, and they had to be killed. Chad and Lori were both convicted in the murders of JJ and Tylee. There's so much more to this story, too, which includes Lori's brother Alex and the details of the death of Charles Vallow, also the death of Tammy Daybed. If you want a video on that, let me know. There's just so much to cover. The possession of Janet Moses is one of the craziest stories I've heard as it deals with a family in New Zealand. Janet was said to be troubled as she recently had some losses in her life, her grandmother, and had some issues with a partner. It was also later discussed that Janet may have had some underlying mental illnesses. The family believed that Janet was acting erratic because of a curse that was placed on her due to the theft of a stone lion at the hotel next door. They had to perform a makatu. Family members described Janet as acting like a lion who was out of control. In the makatu, or lifting, the belief is that water is used to cleanse the person of the curse or demons, and they're still pretty commonplace in the remote Maori regions, but it's pretty rare for anyone to get hurt or die from them, as per Dr. Honka, an archdeacon of the Anglican Maori Church. The person or victim of the curse will sometimes have to be held down as the spirit or the demon inside them is fighting. Well, after speaking with a healer, the family was told that they have to perform a makatu and return the lion statue to where it was stolen. The family loosely improvised the ritual as they didn't have any knowledge of how to do it. During the ritual, a hole had to be drilled into the floor of the house because so much water was being used to cleanse Janet that it was flooding the floor. Janet's eyes also had been plucked from their sockets from the family poking at them because they claimed to see demons in them. She died in the morning by drowning. 5 of the 8 members of the family who participated were convicted of manslaughter. Arieli Naomi Proctor was only 3 years old when her mother, Claudia Hernandez, woke up one morning saying that she was no longer acting like herself. She had been screaming and crying at night for weeks. Arieli looked different, she said. Her eyes were different. They looked empty, and it just wasn't her. What I believe is that she was possessed, because I go to church, she said. After a night of Claudia trying to make Arieli vomit, the little girl bit her finger. It was then that Claudia reached out to her brother, Aaron Hernandez, who told her that he had gifts from God. He told Claudia that the little girl had a demon in her and that she was possessed, and that she needed to be exorcised. He and Claudia began trying to make Arieli vomit by sticking fingers, hands, and other objects down her throat. They also had to pin and hold her down by her arms, legs, and neck, which caused many injuries to her tiny body. Soon, Claudia's father showed up, who was a pastor of a small church that he ran from their San Jose home. He proceeded to continue the exorcism through the day as Arieli continued to vomit. Claudia said that by the evening, God had spoken to her and told her that Arieli would not be returning and that she understood that God took the little girl with him. Arieli died that night. The family didn't revive the little girl. They didn't even try to do anything. They didn't call the police for another 2 hours after the little girl died. Aaron Hernandez, after his arrest, said that it's possible the way that he was holding Arieli was the cause of her death, as God kept telling him to squeeze the girl harder. Claudia and her brother were not arrested for another 4 months, and in that time, Claudia continued to post on social media saying, in one post, "It is what it is." They haven't been convicted as of the publishing of this video. The eclipse of April of 2024 caused so much panic for some reason. Tons of people were completely flipping out on the internet, taking videos and talking about the end of the world. Astrologer Danielle Johnson felt that something big was coming with the eclipse. She warned people on her platforms of the coming apocalypse. In her Twitter, a few weeks before the event, she claimed that people needed to cleanse their spirit because the world was ending with the coming solar eclipse. On the morning of April 8th, Danielle had an altercation with her partner, Jalen Allen Cheney, at around 4 a.m. He was found with one stab wound to his chest and surrounded by religious and ritualistic objects. According to the police reports, the objects were sometimes used in voodoo. Police determined that Jalen put up a significant fight due to the blood splatters on the wall and the floors, several abrasions on his face, hands, and back. After killing Jalen, she took her 2 daughters and fled the scene in her 2018 Porsche and started speeding on the 405 highway. As she entered the highway, she ordered her 9-year-old daughter, who was holding her 7-month-old in the back seat, to get out of the moving vehicle. Danielle swerved and screamed more at the child, and the child opened the door and jumped out, holding the 7-month-old baby in her arms. Horribly, the 7-month-old died on impact after being hit by several vehicles on the 405. She was found on the side of the highway. The 9-year-old was in critical condition and taken to the hospital. She was also found on the side of the highway. Danielle's Porsche was found a few miles down the road, having crashed into a tree. She was ejected from the vehicle, determined to be dead at the scene. At first, police officers thought that the crash was suicide, but later, after investigation, they determined that it was an accident. 3 days before the murders, Danielle went on the internet and tweeted, "Wake up, the apocalypse is here," in an all-caps post on April 5th. "Everyone who has ears listen, your time to choose what you believe is now."